Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our webinar series, The Science and Practice of UL Xplorlabs. My name is Dennis Avalar, and I am the digital content developer on the UL Xplorlabs team. Just so you know, this presentation will be recorded for future use, which we plan on posting as a video on the Xplorlabs website, along with the corresponding documents that are referenced today. With that, I would like to introduce everyone to Dr. Kelly Kina, Director of Education and Outreach for Underwriters Laboratories. Kelly?
Thanks, Dennis. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Science and Practice of Xplorlabs. This is our webinar series where we are getting closer to the content of the Xplorlabs materials with the researchers doing the discovery, hearing from educational experts using Xplorlabs resources in their classrooms, both in person and not in person, as the case may be these days. And then also connecting with educational experts to plan and engage with one another, which is where we are today. And I'm very, very excited about this. In all of our Xplorlabs resources, we start with an issue, a safety science issue that is meaningful and relevant to youth. And then we unpack that issue so that those youth can then make decisions and solve those problems. Last time, we dove into our brand new module, Extraction to E-Waste, which is the battery supply chain, the lithium-ion battery supply chain. And in the last webinar, Dr. Tom Chapin, who's one of our Underwriters Laboratories researchers, took us deeper into the issue of e-waste, really set the scene for why we need to investigate and also start putting some solutions around this issue. The UN has set this e-waste as a global issue now in the coming decades with growing urgency. So we feel like this is a very relevant topic. Now, how do we make it relevant for youth? Well, it all comes down to a mobile phone. So what is the power source of a mobile phone? Where does it come from? And then where does it go at the end of its life when we're ready to trade up or move on from our devices? So as we build out these resources with our researchers, we dream of all of the creative ways that you all will use these resources and think about these topics. And that is why I'm very excited that our second webinar in our series is going to do just that. So Dr. Katey Shirey is going to provide a new lens on a new module, creating a line of inquiry that's going to start at the end and work backwards. I met Katey over the best plate of Brussels sprouts in the Colorado mountains and immediately respected her thinking, her experience, and her approach to teaching and to learning. Since meeting more than a year ago, Katey and I have connected over Xplorlabs. She's joined our team of teacher ambassadors in the Fire Lab, and she was an early and late stage reviewer of the module we are diving into a little bit deeper today. This is a new interactive format for us. We recognize that we're all on long days of video calls and webinars, and so this is intended to be a useful hour for you to develop some planning strategies for how to implement this in person or in a virtual setting with your students in the coming school year. The resources, as Dennis said, the documents are going to be on our webinar page on Xplorlabs, and there will be some links and some guidance there from Katey today. So with no further ado, I'm just so thrilled that Katey's here today and that we have an hour with her to do some of this thinking. And I will introduce Dr. Katey Shirey.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here and joining the UL Xplorlabs team to bring you the exciting module that they've put together and another spin on how you can use it in your classroom to involve your students in engineering design exploration while they learn about this really pressing and personal issue. So the purpose of our webinar today will be to help you as educators to leverage engineering design for increased student learning as they interact in the module. We're going to use the module backwards today, and I'm going to walk you through both the frontwards way of using it and this alternative engineering design process use of the module. Today, we're going to go through some major content themes in the module, and we'll look at 2 ways that you could use the module with students. You will have a chance to pause this recording and practice investigating the module with your student hat on. And then in your teacher hat, we will explore and brainstorm and share content connections. So I just said we're going to take something and put it into engineering design. Just for a moment, take a second to reflect for yourself. Engineering design is all over the place. STEM is the hot topic in education still. How confident are you in turning your classroom content into an engineering design challenge? If that's the expectation for teachers, we're here to help you with one tool on how to do it. Again, the Xplorlabs extraction to EWaste module is a really thorough dive into all the systems involved in the ways that lithium-ion batteries are sourced from the ground, created into batteries, transported around the globe several times in order to enter products and then eventually become waste that must be processed. There's a lot of content in this module, a lot of straightforward content areas, and we've tried to map some of them here. For instance, there's a lot of social studies type aspects here between human rights issues and ethics and decision making. There's a lot of systems involved and systems thinking, everything from electrical grids to global commerce. There's a lot of straightforward physics and chemistry as well, energy and matter, conservation of energy, elements, and the ways that electrical charge can be separated in order to make electrical potential energy. There's some cross-cutting concepts too, like scale and proportion. So this module could afford you a lot of ways to access your curriculum. The module is broken down with a teacher's guide off the front page of the module, and in that guide, you can go step by step through the pieces of the module. And for each one, there's even very handy discussion questions prompted. What's an exothermic reaction, for instance, is one of the discussion questions from section 2. There's also a student guide that follows that exact same flow, where those same discussion questions become prompts for students to see what they've learned. And in addition to the student guide, there's a 50-page PDF called On the Mark that can be used to augment student thinking and exploration about the pieces in the module. So this is one perfectly functional way to use this module. How would you teach with it? You would follow a linear sequence through the 6 module sections, stepping through them together with your students, having them either think at home, reflect online, or discuss in person some of those discussion questions. You'd move from the anatomy of the battery to the whole supply chain, resource extraction, material composition to battery, shipping and transporting, mobile phones, and then end of life. We're going to propose to you today an alternative sequence, which uses the engineering design process to teach the same content. In a typical engineering design sequence, the top of the cycle would be identifying the problem or need. Then we would define requirements and constraints or restraints, brainstorming solutions, evaluating those solutions, designing, building prototypes, evaluating and communicating, and often repeating. Now, while these particular 7 bubbles might not be exactly the words that you are familiar with in your design cycle, they can be pretty much mapped onto any design cycle. So we're going to use them as a generic engineering design process. And in particular, like Kelly said, we're going to start at the end almost. The module, the Xplorlabs module, provides some solutions to pressing problems involved in extraction to e-waste. So we're going to utilize some of those solutions at the solutions phase of the design process. And then we'll need to do the rest together, and we'll ask a lot of our students in their thinking in order to fill in the rest. Today, we're going to practice this, right? Using one of this module solutions videos as a hook. And I would encourage you to always select one that allows you to focus your students on your content. For today, I'm choosing a module or a solutions video called Mechanization and Automation because it is relevant across lots of content areas. But you could do this for any of them. Some of the solutions videos are titled Keep or Repair Your Phone or Trade in Your Device. Questions that kids are really thinking about right now. So today as students, I'm going to invite you to actually practice this in your student hat. We'll look at one of the videos as a hook, then you'll back up to learn what the problem is all about. defining the requirements for a successful solution, identifying other ideas in the brainstorm solution section that may or may not have met this challenge. And then you'll decide on how to test solutions to determine success, evaluate a proposed solution, and prepare a final product to demonstrate your knowledge of the entire problem and how the solution works and doesn't work to meet the problem. Now, these are really thorny issues, so oftentimes there will be pieces that work and don't work, which is an excellent opportunity to talk about trade-offs and value making in our decisions. We've prepared for you a PDF that, as your teacher hat later, you can download from the website. It's going to be called Document Number 1. Use the Underwriters Laboratories Battery Supply Chain Module in Engineering Design Teacher PDF. For today, though, you're welcome to use the student copy of that same document. So that will be document number 2, use the UL Battery Supply Chain Module in Engineering Design student copy. So we're going to do this together. We're going to start with one of the module's solutions videos as a hook. That's mechanization and automation. And I'm going to play the video for you now.
Mechanization and automation. Some aspects of making batteries are dangerous to humans. Employees can be exposed to harmful particles. Making batteries can also be risky if each step is not done the same way every time. Machines, or mechanization, and computers, or automation, offer one part of the solution by keeping workers away from the production steps that are dangerous.
Okay, so mechanization and automation has been proposed as a potential solution for some of the dangerous problems involved in creating this battery. Just want to make sure we're showing the right screen. Okay, good. So we're going to keep moving together here, and we're going to go through this process in order to move from that solution backwards towards understanding the problem. For instance, the video mentioned that making batteries is dangerous to humans, but we don't know yet who's affected. The production steps are dangerous, but in what ways? How could a battery do what that cartoon did and explode? What is that like? Why would that happen? And what harmful chemicals are involved, and where do they come from? So I'd like to encourage you to work through the module to understand some of those questions using the student copy handout. You're going to identify some other ideas that might meet the needs of the challenge. And you're going to evaluate the solution proposed in the video, which is using mechanization and automation. In the end, the product I'd like you to work on, and the product I'd recommend you have your students work on, is coming up with a justified reasoning statement about their recommendation. So this simple form here, I recommend blank to deal with the issue of blank because blank. It's pretty simple, but it would require an understanding of some of the issues involved and the reasons why those issues are significant. Again, we've got some documentation to help you here. There's an overview doc called Use the Battery Supply Chain Module in Engineering Design Teacher Copy. And there's a student copy, a .docx, that you may type into. We're going to watch the video one more time. It's also available on the solution section of the module itself.
Mechanization and automation. Some aspects of making batteries are dangerous to humans. Employees can be exposed to harmful particles. Making batteries can also be risky if each step is not done the same way every time. Machines, or mechanization, and computers, or automation, offer one part of the solution by keeping workers away from the production steps that are dangerous.
So now that you've seen it a second time, what are you going to investigate first? What are we going to see when we get into this module? In order to make our justified recommendation, we've got to get into it. So I'd like to have you head over to the Xplorlabs battery supply chain module and jump into it, looking for some answers to what is wrong with the production process and how could mechanization and automation potentially help it. Again, we're moving from a solution to try to understand the problem such that we can evaluate the solution. When you're in the module, you're going to see a lot of opportunities to navigate around the module. So there's some arrows on either side of many of the sections. There's oftentimes a pop-out box that has a lot more detail and information, and there's navigation bubbles along the bottom as well. I encourage you to try to dig deeply into this module, see what you can find out about why the mechanization and automation solution might assist with some problems made in manufacturing, transporting, and even recycling batteries. Okay, we're back. Now that you've had a chance to dig into this module and seek out more information on how mechanization and automation could potentially help some of the production and life cycle problems of e-waste, your students could be coming back to you to tell you what their recommendation is justified by their research. For instance, they might be saying to you, based on my research and in light of the trade-offs, I recommend blank to deal with the issue of blank because blank. In fact, when I went and dove into the module, I looked at a bunch of videos of people mining the actual resources that go into these batteries. And I was surprised to see that in some cases, they weren't wearing any protective gear. In some cases, they were mining with their own hands, and in some cases in dark, dimly lit, and not very safe conditions. So based on my research, and in light of some trade-offs, I recommend mechanization and automation in order to deal with the issue of unsafe mining practices, because some of these resources are mined in places where regulations don't keep the miners safe. We're going to move on to take off our student hat now and move on to our teacher hat. So in the previous example, I was asking students to look through the module in order to make a justified recommendation about an issue that Underwriters Laboratories has identified a potential solution for. And all of that is very interesting, but I also need to know where my content is. In the previous example I gave, I was understanding better how humans pull resources and minerals out of the Earth's crust in order to be able to make batteries. Now, in that case, maybe my content is about geography. Maybe my content is about humans. Maybe my content is about those minerals in the various crusts of the Earth's layers. Or potentially it's about the actual minerals themselves. How can you plan a similar activity to make sure that it meets your content needs? What if you're a physics teacher? Does mining even matter? Well, it turns out that this particular module and all the UL Xplorlabs modules have a lot of content connections. In order for you to find them, we prepared some materials to help you. You're going to be able to view several solutions on the UL module solutions webpage. And for each of them, I encourage you to consider which content area instruction, inquiry, or investigations you could use from inside this module. In fact, there's going to be not a Google Doc, but an Excel spreadsheet attached to this webinar in which you can brainstorm some of those. And in fact, a lot of them have already been brainstormed as well. We are trying to make an interactive document, and therefore link to the Excel spreadsheet. There will be a link to this online live version of a spreadsheet called UL Xplorlabs Battery Supply Chain Content Connections. As you think about where you can use this module in your content instruction, I encourage you to remember the tools that you already have. There's a content connections map on the following slide, and you'll have access to these slides in the web page. You can use the teacher-facing PDF of how to drive an investigation from the solutions videos, and there's some examples at the bottom of that PDF to help you out as well. And you already have your own resources and interests, your labs, your projects, etc. Many of them will layer onto this web of content as you look for connections. So if you head over to the resource, which is the Excel spreadsheet. Nope. I believe it's showing you an Excel spreadsheet. There's lots, the solutions videos are listed here across the top. We already looked at mechanization and automation, and some ideas have been already brainstormed by other educators in a live webinar of how we can use these in our classrooms. So someone here wrote, what mutations are possible based on the chemicals and elements used in electronics? So if I'm thinking about how to mechanize and automate the production supply process, thinking about how not mechanizing it or what could happen with a battery in biology is a pretty interesting way to make a connection. And then if you click the link at the top here, you will go to the live spreadsheet online to share your ideas. Underwriters Laboratories is extremely interested in your educator ideas and in incorporating them into future resources. So I want to thank you very much for adding those resources. If we were on the webinar together and it was live, I would ask you to please take about 5 minutes and think through that. But now that you're thinking about heading back to school and trying to diverge your thinking for how to bring in more online resources to your remote learning classrooms, I really recommend bringing this idea to your colleagues. This is the sort of project you could bring into across multiple disciplinary science classrooms, even across multiple grade bands. And by working through this exercise with the spreadsheet together, you might find some real synergy for how a particular solution video can spur a lot of thinking and learning across multiple classrooms or in your own classroom. So I'm hoping that now by the end of this video, you're feeling that you have several ways you could use the UL battery supply chain module. The first way is you could step through the module, assigning topics, having students take notes, and answer those discussion prompts. There's a teacher guide on the module website, a corresponding student guide, the module itself, and a 50-page PDF on the Mark Reader. You could also try this other way that we talked about, the engineering design process. Starting at the proposed solutions, you could then ask students to back up to define the problem, explore potential design options, think about how they would test those options, and communicate their justified reasoning. Or you could use these modules or parts of the module a la carte to augment investigations you're already doing, to illustrate the content you're already instructing, and to share those ideas for how students are interested in the world around them, to try to get them hooked on what energy is in their lives and how something like a cell phone battery could have a real impact on the world around them. I thank you very much for coming to this webinar. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to email. It's Katey@edukatey.com. And in the future, I hope to see you at more Xplorlabs webinars. Thank you.